Welcome back to News Diary. I want us to go to Spice FM, where today they are talking to Gilbert Mitula Omware, who is a lawyer, an academic and consultant in human rights, criminal justice and legal research. The topic of the day is a penalty for petty offences. I'll leave you with that. I'll be back at 10 a.m. with the News Center, so stay tuned for that.
In many cases, lack of money or the needed funds to be able to get this done. Helping us have this conversation is Gilbert Omware, who's a pro bono lawyer and an academic, as well as a consultant in human rights, criminal justice and legal research. So as we were taking that break, Gilbert was saying, look, things happened. A petty offense was committed, and for two things: one, can't make the bail, or if you get to the sentencing stage, cannot pay the fine, right? These are the reasons that then essentially get you stuck in the belly of the system, and you're just kind of there hanging around. Nobody's really hearing you. Does the law provide for an alternate? Because here, if the justice system states that, okay, petty offense, a minimal bail for you to get out, what are we talking about now that is unaffordable by a lot of the people who are in that system today?
I think there are alternatives, but it depends on how you are assessing your risk. Number one, the minute you're arrested and you're charged in court, which a lot of people take, they plead guilty, right? They just go and say, I know I did not do it, but it's so much easier for me to just accept that I did this and move on. That way, I don't have to deal with the whole drama of going through a trial. That, I think, is an option that has come up for a lot of people in various kinds of cases where they hope that they're going to get lenient sentencing and that they hope they're going to get non-custodial sentencing. In many situations, especially in relation to petty offenses, they do get it. They get community service orders, sometimes probation orders, especially if it is really, really petty offenses like the drunk and disorderly, community service orders. Even though loitering, I've not seen much of it, community service orders as well. But at the end of the day, with the more serious the offense is, the more likely you are to want to fight it. So,
but are you telling me, sorry, Gilbert,
yes,
are you telling me that today, let's look at some of these petty offenses, some of the ones that you've mentioned, drunk and disorderly. So you had a bad night, had too many drinks, you're doing some business out in the street, right? You get rounded up by the police vehicle, you're taken in because you can't explain what it is that you'll be doing, right? Or even loitering. Loitering means you're just hanging around Moy Avenue, just not doing anything and can be arrested. Okay. So then you're taken into custody and then you're charged in court because it's an offense. Within 24 hours, we understand that's what you must be presented. Okay. As is prescribed by the law, you must be in front of a competent court. I don't know that there are other courts, but be in front of a competent court within 24 hours. If you plead guilty in this, so you plead guilty or you plead innocent, whatever the case may be, then in order for them to release you before a hearing date or all that, you pay what is called bail. Right? So that you can go home. Now, when you can't pay and what would be the bail for drunk, just as an example, drunk and disorderly?
It could be anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000.
Okay. Pay 5,000, 10,000 in order for you to go home. Let's say you cannot do this. You would essentially be retained as a guest of the state until your court date. Okay. Now, court date, they say, okay, slap on the wrist. Don't do that again because of whatever reason. Now pay a fine or go to jail for a month. Right? Would you still have to pay the bail? No, because you stayed.
And also remember, bail is completely refundable.
Okay.
And also remember, if, say, for example, you are fined and you are given, say, 2 months imprisonment. So you are told a fine of 10,000 or 2 months imprisonment. It is calculated for each day that you are spending in custody, the fine reduces.
Okay.
So if after 2 weeks you're able to find the money,
then
they calculate
less
to
that
you.
Amount.
Yes.
Now, you mean to tell me that there are people today who are languishing in remand because they could not pay this amount? Let's even say, because they could not pay the amount of the sentence, right? And the system has not seen it or deemed it fit to have a conversation about what can be done. Community service, non-custodial, etc. Is that what you're saying?
I think the conversations are happening at various levels. There are conversations happening, for example, at the NCAJ level, which is the National Council on Administration of Justice, and through their committee, which is NCCJR. I think that there are also conversations that are happening at the judiciary and at the executive. The problem is when these conversations are being had, are they specifically also listening to these people who are suffering the consequences to understand how did you get here? What are the other avenues of support that we can give you? What makes people like you end up in custody? And then shift the conversation back to the executive or the state and say, what measures can the state take to make sure that the people who are on this pipeline of ending up in the criminal justice system will actually have options or alternatives? For example, if it is somebody who's drunk and they're an alcoholic, that is somebody who needs treatment. That is not somebody who needs imprisonment. If it is somebody who, say, for example, is walking on the street and strips naked, that's a mental health issue. That's not a criminal justice issue. How do we decriminalize, which is the effort now? How do we de-escalate situations where people come into contact with police officers and are in a situation where they're likely to be arrested? How do you de-escalate and how do you move it away? Do the prosecutors, for example, recommend that a warning is given to somebody instead of charging them because there is a question on decision to charge? There is a prosecutor that must approve every single charge that is drafted now. So that prosecutor, what responsibility do they have to say these are people who should not be here? But I have to add a last thing, the financial implications of this conversation, because the reality is this: if we are saying that we are giving fines and we say fines, where is that money going? In fact, is there a quota for that money? And is there a budget that requires that money? Because that's an economic conversation. And furthermore, there is a political economy of this whole system of the criminal justice system. Somebody will say, instead of you going to court, give me 5,000 shillings and you're out.
Who is somebody? And where is this money going?
If we say, well, when I say somebody, I mean, of course, police officers, right? Who arrested you is the police officer. And they're the ones who will have conversations with you. We've had various conversations. For example, if you listen to the Social Justice Center's working group and the accounts that they have, that in places like Dandora, for example, young people are just picked up in a lorry all night. And then they are told, you'll stay here. Call your families. The family that is able to pay, what do? You are released, you go home.
Stay where?
In the police
the
cells.
lorry.
In the cells. And you will then be charged in court the next day.
Charged with what exactly?
For what?
And in fact, I have so many clients who did not know each other until they were told, you two have been charged with an offense. I have so many, not even one, that I can name.
Can you give us an example of this said offense that
Let
will
me
warrant
give,
you being
let me
put
give
in a lorry and
an
sent?
example. And it's not a petty offense, as a matter of fact. It's a serious offense. I have a client. Let's call him John. John was, he had tarmacked the whole day, the entire day with his father. They were looking for jobs, manual jobs. At the end of the day, only had 50 shillings. Went to the shop to buy eggs. Got home, the eggs were bad, took them back to the shop. On his way back to the shop, he had his eggs, spoiled eggs in a jug, and came across police officers. And they told him, come, squat there. He found a group of young men. It was at night, at around 7:30. And at that 7:30, they are all gathered, and they are gathered for some time, and then they are taken to the cells. Once they end up in the cells, of course, nobody came for him because nobody knew that he had been arrested at that time. He lived alone. The next day, he ends up in court, and he's told, whatever you are read to, you just accept. Just say it's true.
Who tells him that?
The police officers. They say, yes, just accept what you are charged for. And when he gets there, he's told that you are charged with the offense known as preparation to commit a felony. And that you are found with a knife preparing to commit a robbery. I worked on that case myself. I'm not talking about something I don't know. I worked on that case all the way from 2019. Eventually, my client was released much later.
When?
He was released, my client was released, I think, in 2022.
From when?
2019.
From 2019.
2 years down the line.
Yes.
No,
23. Yeah, it's 3 years down the line. He was released in 2022. And when he was released, the reason he was released is because no witnesses came in court.
I'm puzzled. I'm sorry,
Yes.
Gilbert. All right, let's go back to Dandora in the evening.
Yes.
All right. He's picked up.
Yes.
Was it there? It was Dandora.
Yes. Dandora.
He's picked up with eggs in a jug. All right.
Yes.
He's told squat here with folks.
Yeah.
And then he's taken to jail.
Yes.
In the
to police cells.
To the police cells.
Yes.
Okay. In the morning.
Yeah.
He's then taken to court.
Yeah.
And before the session begins, he's told, whatever you will be charged with, accept
Just
that
accept.
you've done it.
Yeah.
So he says, yes, I will accept.
No.
He says, no,
I will not.
I will not accept.
Yes.
So the charge sheet is read in court, and the charge then becomes
preparation to commit a felony. He was found with a knife.
According to the charge sheet,
yes.
He was found with a knife.
Yes.
Okay, so he denies the charge.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What happens after that?
After that, you go to trial. So I found him in custody because as a pro bono lawyer, part of the work that I was doing was going to custody to look for clients like these who should not be there.
But in the court, after court, at that point when he's denied this charge, does he then go back to cells?
He now transfers from police cells to prison custody. Yes,
was
as a
there an
remandee.
Option for bail?
So the option for bail is there.
Okay.
And the option for bail at the time, if I can recall it, was I think 50,000. By the time we were, because it's a felony at this point, so preparation to commit a felony is a felony in law. It's section 308 of the Penal Code. So so once it's a felony, then of course he has to raise the 50,000. We talked to the family when I came across him. He says, they say we don't have this money. That's not money we can raise even in our wildest dreams. So after some time, we worked hard and tried to reduce it. It still didn't work. They couldn't afford it. And we had to go through the entire trial process over 3 years of constantly saying, where are the witnesses? Where are the witnesses? Where are the witnesses? The witnesses did not come. Eventually, he was released by the court.
For 3 years?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how many, and I think this is the question here, how many folks do we have in the system who are in a similar, if not the same kind of position?
There are very many and
don't have representation.
That don't have representation are very many, actually. So what does the data tell us? The data tells us that 80% of the people in custody don't have lawyers. 80% of that 58,000 that I told you do not have lawyers, do not have access to any legal services. Of course, then that challenges the question of our legal aid system. And how many people are in a similar situation like him? And you know the beautiful thing about this is that there is data for this. If you go to because the prosecutors and the courts have what we call returns. Offences that are withdrawn under Section 87A of the Criminal Procedure Code are all offences where the prosecutors procedurally are saying we cannot find witnesses for this case. We cannot find anyone who will come to testify, so we are compelled to withdraw the charge because we could not be able to sustain it. But this person can be rearrested again any time later and be prosecuted for the same offences if the witnesses come up. So it will continue to hang over your head.
Why would the police want to, I mean, it may sound like a rhetorical question, but why would the police want to place an alleged crime on an individual who was just walking around minding his own business?
I think for various reasons.
Why?
I think number one is this perception of who a criminal is and what security is. Security is that the police are working, that people are being arrested and taken to court, that the courts are functioning. That gives a sense of security. That is just a way in which it's done. Number two is obviously the blatant over-policing of the most disadvantaged people, right? That if you look at, for example, Makadara Law Courts, which is the largest court in East and Central Africa, it's handling up to 30,000 cases in a year and is handling the majority of police stations in Nairobi. It's handling very many. So to that extent, there is very clear over-policing. But I also think that there is an economic question, and economic on the side of the more the police are there, the safer businesses are, but also that this is a whole system that then the police can benefit off of through corruption and through bribes and so forth.
Okay. We don't live in Kenya, and then the justice system lives on Mars.
Yes.
Judges, magistrates, prosecutors, lawyers, everybody is aware of the social system. Now, if with this awareness of the social system, we still see individuals languishing in jail because of this matter, then it begs the question, why is that awareness not turned into some kind of action to make sure that we can see other things happening beyond individuals languishing in the cell?
I had a conversation with a certain senior of mine, a senior advocate, who told me about a school of thought known as legal realism that says justice is what the judge had for breakfast that day. And if you go back to how judicial officers and even judges may see their role in the administration of justice, a lot of them would say to you, my job is I come, I see the evidence, I apply the law, I meet the outcomes of the law, and after that I move on. This is a job for me. I am in an assembly line. Charge sheet is here, witnesses are here, I take their testimony. I do an assessment, it's a formula, it's mechanical.
I apply.
And that is what a lot of judicial officers would say.
That's the letter of the
That's
law
my
now.
job. So for me, all this context that you are talking about doesn't really assist me, because for me, I'm only doing what I'm here to do.
But we've been told before here that, oftentimes when making a judgment, a judicial officer will take into consideration the social atmosphere, right? So it's not just, well, maybe in word and deed, we're talking about two totally different things. So it's not just an assembly line. That they're going to take into consideration the atmosphere. They're going to take into consideration what might be happening with this individual's life, especially when we look at things like single mothers who has thrown garbage and then she's arrested by, city council officers, and then that case is then escalated. The judge will take that into consideration. So are we saying that truly the justice system, because of numbers or because of this formulaic activity, are just going through the motions and not taking into consideration the social atmosphere at that time?
I think the results speak for themselves. Because if we were having a contextual conversation on who should and should not be in custody, on considering what the context of the people who are in custody is and whether they have people who can take care of them, the reality is a lot of the approaches or lenses through which people are seen as, this is a criminal. I need to be very careful. This person will run away if I give them lenient terms. I need to be very careful. This person might go and harm another person. But not necessarily the context of that these are fellow Kenyans and that we want them to go and also serve and also take care of their families and also build the nation just like I'm building the nation. I think that there is a constant conflict at that boundary of what is required of me as a judicial officer or as a judge who's seeing something in context, plus as what is required of me by the tenets and requirements of the law, and how do I balance the two to make sure that I am